Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the Birdbrain podcast. As usual, we're your hosts. I'm Jay Collins, and with me I've got Envy Khan and Clay Q. What's going on, fellas?
Hey, what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, living the dream, right? It's the holiday season. It's time to talk about some Derevi because that's the best thing to do, right?
I mean, that's my favorite thing to do during the holidays, that's for sure.
New cards, shiny things. If anybody's out there, the best Christmas gift is a beautifully signed foil crop rot.
I did just get one of those today, so no, you may not have it.
Dang it. Well, I tried for you, Envy.
It's fine. I already got mine. No,
Well,
I think
that's
we should fly south for the winter. I think that's what we should do.
as someone that just spent a lot of time in the south, no, I want to stay up north where it's cold. I'm good. No more heat for me.
So we were going to talk about just our core combos today because it's come up quite a few times that people are asking, how do you win? How do you win? How do you win? And besides having an outlet, which is kind of crucial for anything we do, we generate mana through our list of combos.
Step 1 is always usually assemble infinite mana. And step 2 is usually spend the infinite mana, but as with all plans, you start from square one. Usually, our number one core game plan is very simple. Emiel. This thing, you've heard us talk about it a million times. You want to make more than 3 mana to spend 3 mana to then generate more than 3 mana and go infinite. Through a variety of things you can use. We've got a lot of trigger doublers. You've got Delny. You've got Kitten for generating more mana off of a permanent, say like a Bloom Tender. You got Roaming Throne and Elish Norn. Obviously, Gaia's Cradle, as we know. What do you guys think?
It is probably our most efficient way to generate infinite, because you can get there multiple ways. You can get there with rocks. You can get there with dorks. It's layered multiple different ways. It's probably one of our most resilient lines too, because once Emiel hits the board, it's really kind of hard to interact with it besides a removal spell. And it also lets you abuse like any kind of like ETB triggers too, which is pretty nice. So like a spell seeker can win you the game. Derevi with the City of Brass wins the game. It is just the most clean version, and also the easiest to explain to someone how you're going to win the game too, in my opinion.
Most opponents already know how this combo works. So when you're sitting at a table, they're going to talk about it. They're going to expect this to be your main combo line. That's a double-edged sword. It makes it really easy to explain. It makes it really easy to convince players that you're not close to winning with it, and then suddenly are because they undervalue Delny or Kennen or those things that allow you to make 4 mana with something that doesn't normally make 4 mana. But I like this line because any extra mana simply becomes protection for the line by reactivating Emiel and going off over the top if anything goes wrong.
Correct. The pain points on this is definitely, if you're playing against it, you definitely want to remove the Emiel, usually with the activation on the stack, because a lot of the times we tend to jam this in when we only have enough mana for one activation, maybe in one activation and a protection spell. Sometimes we have access, we can activate multiple times on top and go on top of it, which is beneficial, but if you're against the Derevi, likely stuffing the Emiel is a good way to stop it.
Yeah, and a lot of players will try to remove stuff while Emiel's on the stack because they're afraid of Emiel coming down. That's just more tax because most of the time that just sets you up to keep Emiel and go for a win because of it. I think that's about it on this one. I know there's a lot of questions on this one, but you can, if you're still kind of questioning this particular line, it's easy to find extra content on this. This is our most known line. This line is so good that it is played in other decks. I mean,
I mean,
Sisse
yeah,
plays it,
Sisse
for
suited
example.
up pretty easy.
Yeah,
Every it is findable by Sisse activation.
Yeah, TNT has been playing this, I think, in some lists too. Like they're playing Emiel Derevi Cradle specifically.
I could see it.
So our next big one is the unique one to our deck. It's the one that a lot of players look at and go, "Why are you playing this card?" They look at the Chromatic Orrery because it's 7 mana and it's so big and dirtily. And the thing about it is though, with a clone, we use Chromatic Orrery to generate infinite mana while also being a outlet. We don't need a third card for the outlet in this case. Well, a fourth card because Derevi. But so what we do is you resolve that 7 mana Ori, and then at that point, any tutor or any clone is probably a win. So what you can do is you can activate Derevi into play, untapping the Ori, and then use your tutor or your clone to make a clone of Derevi. Legend rule the original Derevi, untap the Ori, and if you do this right, you're now netting mana, and then you activate Derevi into play for 4, gain 1, untap the Ori, rinse and repeat until you have infinite colorless mana that can be spent as though it was any color because of Ori's ability. Ori itself taps to draw you cards, and you can win at your leisure with whatever win con you choose to win with.
Correct. All of these combos are the step 1 of the assemble infinite mana. As you know, none of these actually have shown a way to end the game so far. Also, on screen is literal actual clone. If you're a cEDH enjoyer, you probably know many more clones that are better than actual clone. Please don't run actual clone. Notably, though, just for us, don't run, or at least don't expect to get full value out of Phantasmal Image, because we need to target our things, and the words on Phantasmal Image say that you must sacrifice it. Very common knowledge for us, but just throwing it out there for anyone that may not be in the know. But it draws your entire deck, makes you infinite colorless mana that you can spend as though it was mana of any color. And it's no actual spellcasts, which is another thing. You're not going to be feeding a Mystic heuristic while you do this, because it's all ability activations.
Yeah, this is easily my favorite win combo. The fact that everyone thinks Ori is expensive, and yeah, it is, but it's a legendary. So your Delighted Halfling mana can play it. It's an artifact, so it's easily tutorable into play with things like Transmute for those of us that are still on Transmute. And really, this is our only turn 1 win combo. Yeah, it's a Magical Christmas Land, but it's the only way that our deck can win on turn 1 is by counting to 7 and casting Ori. So
Yeah, it's very powerful. Go off of what you guys said. Just not casting a spell after you've casted the original Ori, just making the infinite mana and drawing your deck after that is very powerful. Just not letting your opponents be able to interact with it unless they have specifically like a stifle effect is what makes it like very powerful. Stifle hardly ever sees play.
Do look out for Trickbind, though, because at least out here in the Midwest, people like their Trickbind. But anyways, our next combo is a combo that I actually don't think any of us are on currently, but it's Preston Felidar. Oh, at least they're in the same spot. That's awkward.
Yeah.
Let me move that over. There we go. But
I'm actually on it right now. I slotted it back in. So
take us away then, Envy.
all right. So this one is it's a combo that doesn't specifically use Derevi. You have to find a way to you have to cast Preston or put Preston into play, and then you have to somehow get Felidar Guardian into play without casting it from your hand. When the Felidar Guardian enters, Preston will see it. It will trigger its ATB effect, which will make a second token of Felidar Guardian. Both their abilities will trigger. The original one you use to target any non-land permanent, or permanent. Sorry. this generates you infinite mana because you can flicker lands, you can reuse your ETB effects. The second token, when it enters, it will target the original Felidar Guardian, which will flicker the Felidar Guardian and then make the original one will re-enter, and then it will make a second token copy of it. So this makes you infinite mana, infinite ETBs, and infinite 0/1 illusions. You can use Preston's second ability to then exile every non-land permanent that your opponents control. It's very easy to assemble with Birthing Pod, because all you need is Birthing Pod and Derevi, and 6 and 9 mana depending on where you're at. If you cast Birthing Pod, you activate Birthing Pod, you pod Derevi away, go get Preston, you activate Derevi, you put it into play, you make 2 Derevis from Preston's ability. So first one untaps the land, second one untaps the pod, and then you pod the Derevi away again to go get Felidar Guardian. It's a very simple and very efficient line. It really just depends. It's just really hard to like win the game after that. That's why some people aren't on it, because or just exiling all your opponent's non-land permanents doesn't necessarily win the game, but it can get you there.
The traditional Bant problem of how do we actually reduce our opponent's life totals to 0 and or use the text, you win the game. So, as MV explains, this eliminates your opponent's board, generates you infinite mana. How do you guys usually go from here once you have your infinite mana? I know that I am a White Plume Adventurer gamer, and that you can flip off of Kitten because it's a non-human, and blinking that infinitely via Emiel allows you to kill the table. And between that and Walking Ballista, I also am on Heliod as well, which we'll cover in a little bit. But that's how I kill the table. How do you guys do it?
I think the other 2 most common are Blind Obedience loops, which you can use with Chromatic Orrery, the clone loop, by just recasting Derevi infinitely. It lets you extort each time you cast to drain the table with that ability. And then I think the other most common way that we win is Fairy Mastermind with Angel's Grace. Some people are on it, some people aren't. It's a little hit or miss on it. You cast the Angel's Grace, and then you activate Fairy Mastermind multiple times using its second ability to draw the table out.
Yeah, so I find that Fairy Mastermind is our best win con, in my opinion. It is very resilient and able to and able to win at instant speed. A lot of our other wins can't. White Plume can if you've got a way to get the White Plume in with instant speed activations, but if you don't, then it unfortunately doesn't get you there because you have to cast a creature. Whereas Fairy Mastermind, even if you don't have it, you can cast a creature and win. A lot of people will say, look at this win line and go, but it draws your opponent's deck. And as you look at it more closely, even drawing their deck, if you already have infinite mana before you start, chances are they can't stop you. We've sat for hours upon hours theory crafting ways to actually beat this, and it essentially requires your opponent to be playing our deck and to know how you're winning and to draw the cards before you draw the cards and be able to force them through. So never really become a concern for me, even though it draws their deck. They can't go off at instant speed over the top of you because if you already have the infinite mana, you just put another 100 activations on the stack on top of anything they try to do. So, yeah, they draw until they draw their Born Upon the Wind and they cast it. While it's on the stack, put another 50 activations. Put another 100 activations. Whatever it's going to take to kill them before their Born Upon the Wind ever resolves. The only way around that is if they're playing Trick Bind, and if you've already got the activations on the stack, Trick Bind itself may not even stop you. So.
And historically, this is a combo that I've been a naysayer of in the past, but I will admit that I am currently on it. I was already on Angel's Grace. Fairy Mastermind is card draw. Why not?
Yeah, I find that Angel's Grace is a very big gotcha card as a win con. Yeah, you talk a lot about it used on Final Fortune turns. Ultimately, Fairy's Mastermind, or not Fairy Mastermind, Angel Grace is not going to stop you from losing a game most of the time. It's just going to force your opponent to try to win another way or to set up and win on your turn or whatever. But it definitely has niche interactions where it can be good. And Fairy Mastermind as a card, not even as a win con, is an incredible card for the deck. Um, yeah, I can't say anything more than that. Like, I've won so many games on the back of Fairy Mastermind and combat mana, just double activating Fairy Mastermind in my combat. Sure, the whole table draws 2 cards, but I draw 5.
Drawing 5 cards does sound pretty hot. I won't lie about that. How do you guys determine how we pivot between our lines when you need to abandon one method and switch to another, for example?
I'd say it's very dependent on what's going on with your board. If you notice like your opponent has like a Ristic Study in play and you have a lot of cards in hand, typically going for the line that's going to involve you casting the least amount of spells is going to be a good way to pivot. Like if you have, say, Enlightened Tutor in hand and you have 7 mana in play, that's a Chromatic Orrery. That's kind of notices that you can go Chromatic Orrery. Or if you have, like, say, you have a Spell Seeker that's already in play, or a way to something to blink infinitely, then the Preston Feldar combo might be a good route to go. It really just depends on what's going overall in the game, and uh, also trying to find cards that like let you pivot easily. Spellseeker being one of them. Captain Sisay, Recruiter of the Guard. Using those cards in conjunction lets you pivot fairly easily between your lines.
Yeah, I like to get an advantage engine online, but like we play Ristic Study, we play all those good advantage engines that everyone else plays. And yeah, those are great to have online. But I like having my Captain Sisay online or my Birthing Pod online because those allow me to flex what I'm doing at any given moment. Captain Sisay basically wins if you untap with it. Um, whether it's through a Derevi activation or through attacking with Derevi to untap Sisay to tutor up your Cradle and your Emiel all in the same go.
Or the Kutzel to silence your opponents first.
Yep, Cutzel or 3 Fury if you're on it.
Yep. One of the few ways we can tutor that to the very.
Yeah, there's a lot of good options there.
Yes, this is like probably the most flexible of them all. Being able to get 2 of the 3 combo, or functionally 2 of the 3 combos available depending on your list. Being able to grab a Meal, Cradle, and Ori, and Preston, and potentially clone if you're on Sakashima the Imposter, is very, very powerful.
Yeah, if you resolve Captain Sisay or are able to utilize her ability, you probably have won the game, like Clay had said. It's usually pretty hard to stop us when we have access to that ability. Just because it opens up so much.
Yeah, and I like Sisay because Sisay is super flexible too. You can go grab Beseju, you can go grab Otawara. You can turn Sisay into another advantage engine, like the One Ring. But the best part about it, like Sisay is so good that I will look at Neoform in my opening hand and go, "This is an advantage engine," because if I'm gonna Neoform Derevi into Sisay and then go from there, that's no different than me trying to jam a Ristic Study into play and hoping nobody has a counterspell, right?
Absolutely. Gets you the cards you need to win the game.
Yeah.
Well, now that we've covered how to navigate between the multitude of lines that we have, let's maybe cover a couple more. Next up on our list, I'm going to go a little out of order here, but we have Valley Floodcaller. This is an interesting one. It's not a perfect combo for us. It does not inherently win the game on its own, just like most of our combos. It just generates infinite mana. And what you need for this is you need Valley Floodcaller itself on the field. You need some mana positive rocks. Hopefully, you then also have rocks of different colors, or at least a rock that generates multiple colors, so you can then convert that mana into colored mana. Because usually it's you have Vanishing Knack or Retraction Helix, and the text on both of these cards are the same. It's a blue instant that gives a creature the ability to return a non-land permanent to its hand. Very useful in our deck because we can abuse it in combat to return multiple objects to hand, or we can combo with Valley Floodcaller to, if we Mana Vault is the good example for a rock here. You cast it for 1, you tap it for 3, you bounce it with Derevi, with Banishing Knack or Retraction Helix on. You then can recast it also at instant speed due to Valley Floodcaller, but the triggering of that will untap your Derevi and allow you to bounce it again after it resolves, and you make another 3 mana. Obviously, you are casting a lot of spells in this loop, so Fish, Ristic Study, going to be eaten up. But if you can use this to generate your infinite mana, you also, in the event that you have one player remaining left besides yourself, you can kill them with 1v1 combat damage with an infinitely large bird, should they not have any flying blockers. That one's really niche. I don't expect people to actually use that, but generate infinite mana, probably sink it into something else we have to end the game.
I have one through the combat step. I did, however, have a Birds of Paradise and Derevi, so I was able to kill multiple players with that. But I really like this one because we have a lot of creatures that trigger off of the Otter. And, we talked about the Otter when it was spoiled and how, Flash is powerful. And we talked about, how we play a lot of creatures and maybe the Otter wasn't the right Flash enabler for us. I promised that it was the second ability is why this card was good, and it is 100% that second ability why this card is good. It is our lowest mana investment win line. So with Otter in play already, which you can get away with from time to time because other players will want to clone your Otter, and they'll look at you and think that it's okay that you have Otter because although it gives you Flash, your deck is primarily a creature deck. A third of our deck is creatures, so it's not such a big deal that we have Flash. I mean, we play 5 sorceries, 6 sorceries in our sorcery heaviest decks. We play 10 artifacts, 5 enchantments, so that's 20 cards on our whole deck that benefit from Otter. So people will let you keep it. If you've already got the Otter in play, this line costs 1 mana to start. If you don't have the Otter in play and you have to play the Otter first, it costs 4, which is super cheap by comparison to most of our other things costing 7 to get started. And therefore, it allows you to steal wins and protect wins in different scenarios. And it's a flash speed win line. I like it a lot because even if there's a stacks piece on the board stopping you, this line is resilient enough to often bounce a stacks piece off of the board and then allow you to win through it. I like it because it doubles as a removal piece instead of a combo piece if the game warrants you needing that instead.
Yeah, this line is really strong. I will say it did get hit a little bit with the mana crypt banning, but other lists are incorporating this line, like Rograk Thrasios. I think some Shorekai lists are running it. I've seen a Timid Thrasios list run this. Like, it's a very powerful line. Like, the card is, or Valley Floodcaller is a very, very powerful card.
Yeah, and those decks don't even have Derevi available to them to just sit and play and have a bird.
Yeah.
They have to work to have their bird or their otter. We just have it.
Well, Valley Floodcaller is an otter, so it untaps itself.
Yeah, but it can't tap itself the turn you play it. So you have to have it in play for a turn for that line.
And if your commander is Thrasios, or at least one of them is, I'd say this combo is even better when you have a free infinite mana outlet in your command zone. Derevi unfortunately does not have that, so that is one thing to have over us. Because you can just make infinite mana and then draw your deck with Thrasios, and then you win.
That's every Thrasios deck.
Yeah,
That's why Thrasios
absolutely
is popular.
But just noting that we are not the perfect deck for this combo. Like, I think this is even better in like Glarb, for example. But it's still something we can take advantage of and use for our own purposes.
Absolutely. This is definitely an optional combo if it fits with the way you want to play. It goes really well with the next combo we're going to talk about, which is the Kitten 3 Fairy line. If you include those extra combo lines, the Helix also combos with Kitten and Derevi to do the same basic thing as with Otter without having to need Otter. So there creates another layering on that combo if you're including that line also. And I'll touch on that when we get to there.
Well, look at that. We're there.
So Kitten and 3 Fairy is a line that I've always really wanted to play in Derevi, and for the longest time I've tried sticking it in, and we have a lot of Derevi players that really like this line and really want to play this line. And I think it's playable because it is a built-in silence, which is very powerful. A lot of the reason we stay away from it is because 3 Fairy is just not really the right card for our deck. Without black tutors, he's not the easiest thing to get into play. So it's kind of, you have to naturally draw the 3 Fairy for this line to really work, which is kind of why we've avoided it. Wargate helps here. Sisay helps here. But other than that, like...
There is a white, I think it's a sorcery that tutors for a legendary or a snow permanent, but it's also
3 mana.
No, it's not good.
If you wanted to go all in on that, you could. But what I really think for if you're including this combo is what you're really wanting to do is go all in on Kitten lines. And Kitten is a very, very powerful value engine that kind of is a build your own combo machine. With Derevi in play and Kitten, you can very easily generate a lot of mana through slinging spells just by flickering Derevi. With Ewit, you can create loops that generate infinite spell casts. With Delny and Kitten, it's just broken. Like, you get 2 Kitten triggers off every spell cast. Go to town. Add Delny, Kitten, and Derevi. I mean, you're probably infinite right there. It's insane. The other nice thing about the Kitten through Fairy line is you don't need Derevi. So if you're in one of those pods where everyone's just killing your Derevi, then you have another way. That's the same selling point of Preston Felidar. We see it again with our Valley Floodcaller. We see it again with our Kitten through Fury, so that we don't become a commander-centric deck. With the Retraction Helix in this line, you can cast Retraction Helix on Kitten. Tap Kitten to bounce your Mana Rock, as it were, just like you were going to. And then when you cast the Mana Rock, you use Kitten's trigger to flicker Derevi to untap Kitten, and you generate infinite mana that way by repeating the process.
Correct. And then you could pair that with Blind Obedience. You could draw some cards with Teferi. You do have a Displacer Kitten, a Mana Rock, and a Teferi at that point.
Yeah, this line's very strong. Like as mentioned before, the 3 Fairy is a little difficult to tutor up, which is typically why we tend to stray away from it. And Displacer Kitten is a little bit of a build around. You have to be more of a spell heavy than a creature heavy version of the list to be able to fuel the Kitten. But yeah, it is very powerful. A lot of decks that are playing Displacer Kitten, a lot of decks are playing 3 Fairy. It's very, very powerful effect.
Speaking of Blind Obedience, shall we move to our next combo line? It's
Snap Ewit, right?
Yeah, Derevi traditional classic right here. Notably, you do need 5 creatures if you're using Gaia's Cradle, because you need 3 to pay for the Ewit, 1 to pay for the colorless and snap, and 1 to go positive, and then a blue land. Because snap untaps 2 lands, that covers your mana cost for both spells, and then goes on top of that. Ideally, you make a bunch of mana, you continue looping snap from your graveyard, and then you start making white mana, and then you extort people, is the common ways that I've seen this played out. But you gentlemen have a lot more experience with this combo than I do, so why don't you talk about it?
So this combo, it's very layered because if you're already on E-Witness, you're already playing Cradle because of the Emiel lines. So snap is just like an easy thing to put in. So it's very layered with each other. Snap, you can use it as a removal spell first to be able to bounce your opponent's stuff. Like say if they're going for like a creature-based win con, you can bounce their win con, and then you can play Ewit, return snap back to your hand, and then go for the line there. It's once you start generating the infinite mana, this also gives you infinite spell cast. Like we said, so blind obedience does win through that. It's it is very difficult to pull off, especially with the Orcish Bowmasters in the meta. So, while it is very easy to slot in and it is easy to layer, this is probably one of our most difficult combos to pull off.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think if you can afford it, if in other words, if you think Snap is good, you should be on this combo. But I don't think I would ever pivot to try to make it happen. The only exception to that might be if you just have an abundance of mana laying around and you're also on Spellseeker. I could see a world where you use like Finale for Ewit and then return Finale and then Finale again for Spellseeker, and Spellseeker goes and gets Snap, and then you try to win from there. But that's kind of Magical Christmassy Land. I want to keep that strategy in the back of my mind because it's powerful strategy, but I don't think it should ever be your game plan. It's more of a, hey, I just stumbled into this and it lets me win scenario.
It's a great plan C, you know? It, like you say, it's one of those things where you use snap on something during the game, and then at one point you have the opportunity to put Ewit into play, getting snap back, and you go, oh, it's time to do this. Okay.
Ewit and Snap independently are really good cards and worthy of their slot as a removal and a recursion piece. They both layer into many other things we want to do, and because of that, their inclusion is just easy. And they create another way to generate our infinite mana and use one of our outlets to win.
I think I'm back on this line as of 2 weeks ago. I come on and off of it. I cut one of my Retraction Helix or Banishing Knack and went down to 1 and put Snap back in order to re-enable this line in my list. I don't think I'll ever win with it, but hey, I've got the ability to.
Yeah, I cut this, or I actually cut this when I went through my last iteration, because instead of Eternal Witness, I'm on Endurance right now, and I'm in the theory of if you're not on Ewit, you shouldn't be on Snap, because there are better bounce spells than Snap, but if you're on Ewit, Snap is just an easy, like you slot it in and it just has, if the stars align, you got it.
Yeah, it's a very low cost to include, for sure. Although, speaking of costs to include, our next combo is Heliod Ballista. This one's a little more controversial, I'd say. It's certainly not the Derevi classic that Ewit Snap is, because many people will tell you that Heliod Suncrown is a dead card. And that's mostly true. Ballista is a great infinite mana outlet. It allows you to spend all your mana and actually kill the table. It allows you to ping things down. It is a great Bowmaster deterrent if you have this on the board sitting on 2. If you have this on the board sitting on 2, you can also then tutor up the creature half, in air quotes, of Heliod Suncrowned, because it's only not a creature on the board. All of your creature tutors like Neoform, Invasion of Ikoria cannon activations can still hit Heliod. So it's kind of a surprise. Oh, the Ballista just wins now. And it does end the game, which sometimes it's, oh, I cast a Ballista for 4. Oh, I'll do an invasion for 3 on top of that. Spend 2 mana, boom, assemble A+B, end the game. Bant has always historically struggled to end the game. This is one way of doing it. I know that I've been on this line a lot longer than you guys have, but I know you tested this out at least a little bit recently, Envy. How was that for you?
It didn't do too great. My Heliod got turned on surprisingly with all the white pips in my deck, and then it got draked, and then was not fun.
That is a very
yeah.
interesting one. Yeah, usually I'm
Yeah.
not expecting Heliod to get gilded draked.
Yeah, they were just like, oh well, I'm just gonna take this, and then that way you won't have a way to win through Ballista. So I cut it from my list. That's why I slotted back in Preston Felidar to try that back out. I mean, it's still just an A+B. A+Bs are very good. It's somewhat easily tutorable. They're both tutored by Enlightened Tutor, and Creature Tutors, which is very flexible. Just the amount of mana it takes is a lot. Also, but I guess we are a very mana heavy.
It's
like
9,
we make
right?
yeah.
It is 9. That's correct.
Yeah, I think it's probably the most mana intensive line that we have. Because I don't think the Chromatic Orrery line is that mana intensive because you spend 7 to get 5 back.
Yeah, I think
it's
costs
7.
more total mana, but because you get the 5 back with every untap, like,
Yeah,
pays for itself real quick.
It's the Orrery line is 7. You cast Orrery, then 5 of it is Derevi, which leaves 1 extra, and then you tap it again for 6 total mana to cast your whatever for your clone and go from there. So it's 7. Because if you have 6 mana, you can get a clone off of any of our tutors and cast it.
the other thing that makes this a little difficult is if someone has One Ring protection, you have to give this thing a lifelink twice to be able to kill them, which can make the combo even heavier. Because a lot of our other lines, if someone has One Ring protection, you have infinite mana, and you have ways to keep the infinite mana with like Emiel flickers or the Chromatic Orrery, stuff like that. This one, you have to kill the other 2 players first, and then have another 2 mana left over, and then activate again, and then do it on the person's upkeep. So that is also a factor. But having A+B that is both easily tutorable, that doesn't rely on Derevi, is very powerful. So I don't slot, or I don't, I said, or if you put this in your list, it's fine. I'm not going to be like, hey, you shouldn't be on this, because it's still a valuable or it's still like a good combo to have.
We didn't have Soul Cauldron, I would say don't be on it, but Ballista and Soul Cauldron is super synergistic, and I like how it plays with the deck currently, which is why I'm on it. But I think that without that, because then it's Heliod plus anything as long as Ballista's in your graveyard. It doesn't work the opposite way around, unfortunately. You can't ban Heliod and use that. But go ahead, Clay.
Well, I really do think with Soul Cauldron, Ballista is a very viable outlet for our deck. It's a little bit pricier, so I would play it in the slower list. Your list being one, you're not full stacks anymore, but you're still stacksier than most of the other mid-range lists. And because of that, I think Ballista is a very good outlet for your deck, because 4 mana for a removal piece that then combos to be an outlet to win the game is very good. But I don't think Heliod is worth the slot in most of our lists, because we just generate infinite mana and Ballista wins by itself. And that's kind of where I sit on this combo. I don't think this combo is actually playable. I believe that the part of this combo that is, however, is Ballista, as long as you're on the Soul Cauldron lines to go with it.
Yeah, I think this combo does have like probably some of the better support pieces of a lot of the other combos that we talked about. Soul Cauldron being one of them, being able to be tutored by multiple ways. It's very like you can pivot somewhat easier with this. and be more flexible with this line. Not having infinite mana is also another draw to this, because all you have to do is just get your 9 to 11 mana and go to town.
All right. And last but not least, our final combo of the day: Unctus and Aphetto. Or Aphetto, sorry.
So I, after Nadu was gone, I started looking for more options, because I needed a new card advantage engine for a lot of the playstyle I was after, and I ended up settling on Unctus, and I really, really wish I had found Unctus prior to Nadu, because I think it would have gone good with even with Nadu, or even before Nadu got printed. Because what Unctus does is he allows us to loot our deck anytime we attack with Derevi. Anytime we tap a mana dork, we can use Unctus as a value engine. When I started playing around with Unctus, I looked at Aphetto Alchemist, which is one of the primary combos that we saw in Nadu. It targets itself to untap itself to create an easy A plus B combo that allows us to loot our way through our deck. Basically, if you have 3 cards in hand and 4 or 5 mana total, maybe even less depending on the scenario. I think I did it with as low as 2 mana or something. In one of my goldfishes, you can sculpt the perfect 3 cards and turn Unctus Aphetto into a win. I've seen games where either of these 2 value pieces turn into a just a combo win. A perfect 3 cards to use any of our other combos and win. That's
Perfect hand
yeah.
sculpting is a powerful tool.
Yeah. And it's not card advantage, it is card selection. With this package, I usually include, I've been saying I would include Savine's Reclamation, Shifting Woodlands, and like either Noxious Revival or Ewit, because including those cards allows every card that you bin to still be available to you. And you can... So I talked about 3 cards. If I have 3 cards in hand, if I've already played a land, I'm looking for Crop Rot. But if I haven't already played a land, you can usually loot your way to like Cradle and play Cradle, and suddenly have a bunch of mana to do something with. If you got enough creatures, you loot your way to a Court of Calling. You loot your way to some win combo with Agatha Soul Cauldron in the graveyard and Savine's Wreck, and you play your Cradle, you pay 5 mana, and you flash back the Savine's Wreck to return the Agatha Soul Cauldron and the Ballista if you have it, or the Agatha Soul Cauldron and who knows what other card, because Emiel's in your graveyard now, and you tap Agatha Soul Cauldron to give a creature Emiel's ability, and you go to win.
You loot into your infinite mana generator and your infinite mana outlet, and you end the game. Correct.
Yep. Aphetto is the weakest card here, and only warrants playability because it's a mana dork, basically. If you have another mana dork or a mana rock, you can use Aphetto to untap that, and therefore he's a 2 mana dork. Unctus, on the other hand, is, in my opinion, an includable card just for an advantage engine, whether or not you have, whether or not you play Aphetto. I demonstrated Emiel Bloomtender Unctus Derevi as a way to win. You make your Bloomtender blue, and then with Unctus's ability, and then every time you tap it, that allows you to loot. So even though you're not gaining mana, you're still looting cards, and you can find an enabler to allow your Bloomtender to make 4 mana, and then you can go infinite from there. Yeah.
I think we're missing the key part. Aphetto has morph, so you can morph it and say it's a Void Mage Prodigy.
Or Willbender.
Willbender.
Or Willbender.
Hit him with the special action.
Willbender. Yeah, absolutely.
This
If you want to be sneaky and people don't know your deck, you can put that Aphetto out there as a morph, and people are going to go, what? And you can maybe sneak it around to a turn without having to deal with somebody's sickness, and then win. Yes, I have done that. However, I did not succeed on making it to my turn because my opponents panicked at the fact I had a morph creature and they didn't know what it was, and they removed it.
That's actually really funny. No, I think this combo is powerful. The only drawback I see of it is just like you just have to have cards in hand, which sometimes like if you're in like a grind fest, it can be a little difficult to keep cards in hand. But other than that, like it's very flexible. It's very because Unctus being about the artifact creature, you can tutor multiple ways. And Aphetto is pretty cheap. So, and it can untap artifacts. So you can untap your birthing pod. You can untap your mana vault.
One
It
ring.
has one ring. It has multiple uses, which it's on. I think it's on my next round of testing. Once I get my next set of proxies in.
I think everyone should be on this combo. If at the very least on Unctus, but I think everyone should be on this combo because both cards are independently good for our deck, and you can do it if you're on Savine's Wreck, you can do it with one card in hand. Chances are that one card in hand enables you to get and play Cradle, and then the Savine's Wreck flashback from the graveyard should be enough to win with a different combo line, even if you only have the Cradle. So with only one card in hand.
No, that's completely fair. I was just mostly pointing out that if like say you've already used your land drop per turn, it can be like a little weird with that timing. But like I said, it's still powerful combo.
Yeah,
It's
if you've already used your land drop for the turn, you're reliant on Crop Rot to get the Cradle into play, and that could cause you problems. But a big factor of this one is mana and cards and what resources you have, whether or not it can win. And I find that the ability to play Cradle, if you're going for this line, is a big part of what gives you those resources. You've already got two creatures. You probably have Derevi. Cradle is probably a 3-mana land in almost any circumstance.
If not more.
If not more. And when it's more is when it makes a big deal. So you can quickly do the calculations on your hand being one card in your hand is Cradle, and then the other cards in your hand are whatever. And then don't forget that you can always loot until you've got like Delny and Ewit or something in the graveyard and Savine's, and you can use Savine's to put Delny and Ewit into play at the same time and get, two cards back out of your graveyard to get any other two cards in your deck. And that doesn't even require you to have any cards in your hand. That's just you get two more cards out of your deck of your choice because you've looted down to wherever you need to be at that point. You do have to be a little careful to not loot yourself into decking. But when you play things like Flare of Denial, it's easy to sacrifice Unctus. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even think about playing Shifting Woodland either. Like,
I'd say that's a good scenario for Shifting Woodland. Yeah, you definitely.
I think it's a full package.
Graveyard package there.
Think
6
I
would work
think
well.
it is.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if I want 6. I don't know if 6 is actually good enough on its own. Like it's a good card, but I feel like it's not really where we want to be as a deck. But I definitely think that this combo, while it's Aphetto Unctus is the combo, the inclusion of cards like Savine's Wreck, Noxious Revival, Eternal Witness, Shifting Woodlands, and Agatha Soul Cauldron are very build around me for this, and very powerful if you do include them. All cards we're including already, most of us.
Sure.
So.
Yeah. All right. Well, that'll wrap us up for episode 4 today. Let us know what you think. If I'm sure there's lines that we don't cover here, guaranteed to be, but let us know what you think. Experiences you've had with playing these lines, things that you find might help someone else out. Let us know in the comments. As always, we're the Birdbrains. You guys have a good night.
Yep. See you.
Yeah, good night, guys.